So his story about corporate America is no way unique, and he's been doing pretty well for the past 20 years, working for a Fortune 500 company, and being a graduate of a fancy private school and a product of the Ivy League company, university. It was not a surprise that he ended up in six-figure club, working as a senior executive and climbing to the top of his career ladder at a steady pace. And it seemed that his rocket ship to success was unstoppable. But now he was standing, but that day he was standing in the corridor of his office building and holding a pink slip. He was handed by his boss a couple of minutes ago, and the boss has asked him to came back to him later in 15 minutes to discuss some details. So when he entered his room, his boss said to him that he was sorry to break that to him, and said that his contract was terminated and half of his department that he was running would be laid off. And he said that times were tough and the recession was forcing them to downsize, and in order they could save the money for some extra money. And he said that everybody had to make sacrifice, and that the narrator shouldn't take it personal. It just the company just did everything that was good for the company. And the narrator was very angry because he imagined that the boss made has had to sacrifice, and he had to he now couldn't afford him a newer Lamborghini, and had to settle for an ordinary Ferrari, and the boss wife had to cut down on her bench buying diamonds. But the narrator was a person who had something to lose, because he had 3 kids and mortgage, and so he was very upset. And at the top of that, he had the birthday that day, and he felt very badly, and it was a blow in the back, and he couldn't have thought about it before, and he now thought that his services were no longer needed, and he didn't know whether he should to look for a job right now. And after leaving his building with his belongings in a cardboard box, and carrying away all his professional excellence and pride, and he was very shocked because he didn't know how he could he could get back to on the market after he has been shown the door in such a ruthless way. But at least he would he would have a generous severance package because he negotiated his way for a golden parachute agreement with his employee some years ago, and he might invest them in some of his capital in stocks, and went on a holiday together with his family to Hawaii because he hasn't been on holidays in years, and sunshine and money might heal his wounds. And has been worked for this company for 20 years, and he remembered the day when he went there for the first time. He was 26, and he was he had bright-eyed and enthusiastic, and he was ready to take on the world. And at that time he sent out a lot of CVs and had dozens of job interviews, and some of the employers offered him a job, and he didn't know whether he should take the offer or kept on searching another job, more appropriate job. And one day he saw a job posting in a business magazine, and it seemed promising. A decent pay, good insurance benefits, solid retirement plan, and some other perks. And he had the right skills and education level, so he applied for this job and sent the resume and cover letter. And next week he, a secretary of the company, called him and invited for a job interview. And the interview was short, and he was asked some questions, told about himself, about his internship and academic achievements, and some personal background. And so the interview was short, and at the end of the interview, to his surprise, he was offered a job right there on the spot. And their employer said that he had the best he was the best candidate for the position so far, and he was hired, but he had to work hard and prove that he could handle their responsibilities. So that was the story how he landed the job, and since then he has been promoted several times and shifted across various branches and departments, and eventually he rose to the head of marketing and sales. And it's been a big and hard journey, and he worked 24/7, not literally of course, but he had the feeling that he hadn't got enough rest, and his working day started at around 7, and he first of all checked the emails and responded to the most urgent of them. And then he had a cup of coffee and headed straight to his office. And he was responsible for, no, he scheduled their meetings and arranged conference calls and made marketing and sales proposals, ran financial reports, and gave product presentations. It was not all. He also spent time going to a business meeting and corporate parties, and when he came back home there was some work to do, because he had colleagues in other time zones, and apart from that he managed a team of 150 people, and that people were going to lose their job, and he didn't know how to say that to them. Several times he was on the edge of exhaustion and overlooked and sleep deprived, and he was facing depression, and his parents were very worried, just his mother worked as a teacher, and she loved her job, but she had to quit it because of some health issues, and they could partly be caused by her workaholism and poor life and work balance. And she was worried about his son, that could happen to him too. Speaking about his dad, he worked he worked in a factory for most of his life, and he always said, if you are not satisfied with your job, you had to do something with it, because when he was young, he was involved in some labor union activity, and he whenever factory workers were unhappy, they went on a strike, and they would go on a strike and to demand better conditions. And most of workers worked 24-hour shifts on day and night basis, and they were very tired. So his father helped to organize a strike and helped to change the working shifts into 20-hour shifts, day and night shifts. Okay, preserving the same salary, of course. And he was promoted to a factory supervisor, and he had worked there for the most of his life, and he made a successful career, and he retired now and lived in Miami. But speaking about the narrator, he couldn't go on a strike because corporate white collar America took no pity on those who were tired or exhausted, and he wanted to know how people dealt with their stress and burnouts, because he used to work more so he used to work more, So it was his answer, and in his environment, it was frowned upon if you were taking a day off in the middle of the week, and when the things were unbearable. Once or twice a year, he took sick leave and came back again on Monday. And at some point, he had almost had enough, and he was on the verge of giving a. He was on the verge on giving a 2-week notice, and when his boss yelled at him in front of other colleagues for no reason, but resigning was not the option. Resigning was not the option because what? Because his wife that time was on a maternity leave, and he couldn't stop working and left his family without an income. So he kept working, whatever, no matter that. And he never thought that everything could happen, everything could end up like this, getting dismissed from his job after after everything that he has done for the company, and he was not ready to leave everything like that. He decided to go to his boss and say everything what he had thought about him, because he didn't like him and the boss didn't like him either. And after all, he knew about him everything. He knew that he could ousted him from ousted him from his job in favor of one of his nephews or some other relatives, and he wanted to say to him everything about his incompetent authoritarian and nepotistic management. And so he came in and the lights were off. He stepped in and he saw some confetti raining down on him, and there were a bunch of balloons, and there was a happy birthday party on the table, and his boys and co-workers yelled surprise, and he was shocked because he couldn't believe his eyes. That was their birthday prank. He was just very shocked, and his boss said, ha ha ha, he fell for it, and he said that he would never give him a fire because he was very good worker, and he just laughed, and he was red with laughter, and patted his employee on the back. But the narrator was decided that he had enough, and that day he decided to quit, and that was for real now.